Hello my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to r/MaliciousCompliance, where people follow exact orders to spite someone. And in today's episode, workers are getting fed up, guys, and they're fighting back against nightmare Karen bosses. We've got careers ending, Karen bosses getting embarrassed, and one OP tells a story about a lazy Karen boss giving the worst orders ever, and it results in a huge payday for them. Guys, I hope you enjoy the stories today. Don't shake your heads too hard, and as always, you can send or link your post to this email right here. Let's dive in. The last job I had was an overall mess, but the particular manager I had wanted to try and introduce more structure and rules to the place. The guy had moved here from out of state, and he had a long resume of help desk/IT supervisory experience, and at first, he seemed like a decent, skilled guy. Then came the overtime policy. Previously, overtime was allowed without needing approval because sometimes the calls run long as it wasn't excessive. Excessive meant more than 5 hours, and even then, all you had to do was explain what took so long. And management was happy to approve it because sometimes tech stuff does get messy, and it takes a while. The previous manager never had any issues approving it, and the CIO never had any issues approving that approval. That said, one of the new manager's changes was that all overtime had to be approved, and if it wasn't approved, and spoiler, it was rarely approved, it meant telling a customer you had to cut a support call short when your shift was over. Of course, that's a terrible idea, but okay, pal, I'll help you dig that grave for yourself. One day, I end up getting a call about an hour before my shift ended, and it was a call that was a bug in our software that was fixed by a particular Windows update. The clinic closed at 5:30, and the office manager asked us to do it after hours. So I talk to my manager, and he gives me written authorization to work late and get Windows updates run on about 30-some computers. I do that, and it roughly takes 4 hours as the clinic's internet connection starts to bottom out if I had more than 4 to 5 remote sessions going on at one time. No big deal. I get it done, submit my time punch card for that day, and think nothing of it. Well, my boss calls me in the next morning with, "I can't approve this much overtime. The CIO would never authorize it." I remind him that he authorized overtime for this and that he knew it was one of the larger clinics. He then says, "Well, you should have just started some and then clocked out and checked on them, and then clocked back in when the others were ready. You didn't need to babysit them. I'll authorize 1 hour overtime." So I explained to him that that's a stupid idea, and also that it's not legal to pay me for time worked when he authorized that time and I have it in writing. He says he doesn't care, and I'm only getting 1 hour of overtime authorized. So I say to him, "Fine, from now on, I'll clock in exactly at 8 a.m. and I'll clock out at 5 p.m. He then snaps at me and says, "Good, that's the policy." I then leave. Instead of reporting him to the CIO, who I was on friendly terms with right away, I spent a few weeks collecting things, like really pissed off doctors and clinic staff. And every time they got understandably angry that I was dropping a call when the issue wasn't resolved, I would apologize and I would tell them it's the manager's fault, as it's a policy that he implemented, and not only is it illegal for me to keep working without the company paying me, I flat out wasn't going to work for free. I then suggested they email the CIO and CC the manager on it, telling them exactly what they thought of the new policy and how it affected their practice and their patients' opinion of the clinic. About a week later, the CIO pays a surprise visit, and he wanted to speak with me. He asked me what on earth was going on. He was getting all these pissed off emails from clinic sites saying the techs were dropping calls immediately at 5 p.m. CST, regardless of what time it was at the clinic or if the issue was fixed or not. And they all said the same thing, about it being the manager's policy. I then explained the policy to the CIO, and also told him about the overtime incident, and he just lost it. The guy gets up, opens the door to the empty office he was using, and he yelled across the whole IT floor for the manager in question to get his ass in here right now. The manager got torn to pieces and then forced to apologize to me, and then marched out of the office like a child by the CIO, who then called everyone over, made him apologize to everyone else for the policy, and asked us all to email him dates and actual overtime hours, so he could check the time clock to see if they coincided with the dates the manager had edited. He ended with telling the manager, "You're lucky I don't fire you right now, but if I were you, I would consider maybe not selling your house in the city you relocated from just yet." The CIO also sent out a department-wide email stating the manager's overtime policy was revoked immediately, and we were going back to the original method of dealing with overtime. He also reiterated that he would have absolutely no issues with approving any overtime, as long as it was clear that it was necessary to get a clinic's systems back up and running, which is what the old policy had been anyways. The manager ends up resigning before they fired him, and in one conversation we had after he left, he swore it's because the CIO, quote, randomly decided he hated me for no reason. Sure there. I frickin' love that. I have no idea why the CIO hated me. Well, maybe it's because you caused such a frickin' headache for everyone when you went on that little power trip. And seriously, I'll never understand managers that act like your pay is coming out of their pocket. Like, if the company's happy to pay overtime and the employees are happy to do it, why try to change the system when it isn't broken? Unless that new manager is trying to save the company money by being like, "Hey, look what I did, give me a bonus." But again, if that's the system that's been running amazingly forever, don't frickin' try to change it. Why try to ruin a well-oiled machine? So I used to work as a researcher in an inbound call center. I loved the work, and the company was fantastic when I started. But after 4 years, they got bought out by a big international corporation. Within weeks, the company went from being fantastic to work for to just yet another crappy, tense work environment where the bosses take advantage of the employees. Here's one quick example of how badly they nerfed the bonus structure. One particular bonus went from being able to earn up to $1,000 extra in 3 days to a single $50 local pizza gift card. Previously, all employees got paid varying bonuses under the scheme, but in the new system, only one person gets the gift card. And they had the nerve to get mad at us when the new slap-in-the-face bonus failed to motivate anyone. That said, I was good at my job, and not to brag, but I was the most productive employee on the floor. We were given 15 paid time off days to use every year, which according to our employment contracts and company handbook were to be used for sick days, mental health days, and other personal reasons. No explanation was ever asked for, just use them as you will. I always made sure to use up all of my paid time off by the end of the year, as it didn't bank, and previous management encouraged us to do so. And also, there was no bonus for not using it. I followed the company rules. I always gave plenty of notice, and only once left the team dangling with no notice, as I got seriously ill in that time. Well, the new management takes over, and right away, they start trying to intimidate us into not taking paid time off. I hear a lot of this from my fellow employees, how when they call in sick, the supervisors have started grilling them, challenging them, saying, "You don't sound sick." A lot of intimidation and bullying. So by the time I need to use a paid time off day, I'm ready. I call in one day and I tell them I won't be in tomorrow. They want to know why. So I tell them I'm not feeling well. Their voice grows immediately cold and they get a rude tone and they say, "You don't sound sick to me." Being a smartass, I say not even doctors try to diagnose illnesses over the phone. But they kept trying to push me, saying, "Can you come in the afternoon? You don't sound sick. You've been using a lot of your sick days, way more than any other employees." I got tired of being treated like a criminal for obeying the rules, so I got a recording app for my phone. I live in a one-party consent area, so it's perfectly legal to record phone calls. The next time I felt sick, I called into work. Now, they always begin every call with a disclaimer saying, "Thank you for calling so-and-so. For your information, this call may be monitored or recorded for quality purposes." I then say hello, give them my name, and then say, by the way, just so you know on my end, this call may be monitored or recorded for quality purposes. Because I'm recording the call, I think it's only fair to let them know. The supervisor gives out a laugh and then says, so why are you calling in sick? You don't sound sick to me. I'll tell you what, I'll put you down as sick for the morning, but that you'll be in for the afternoon. I inform them that no, I'm calling in for at least 1 day, and I'll update if I don't feel better. They respond, no, I'll put you down for a half day and you can call in again if you don't feel better. Once again, I say no, restate my position, and tell them that's that. Well, she gets really pissy and she starts insinuating that this might cause me to lose my job. She then says, why do you take so much more paid time off than the other employees? I respond, I take what my contract says I'm entitled to, no more, no less. She then responds, well, you should have better team spirit. We'll have to review this with HR. And yeah, she uses a threatening tone, classical bullying playbook. I'm off the next day, and I come in for my following shift, and I get told, go see HR. So I sit down at this guy who I'll call Art's desk in HR. He's very much a corporate HR lapdog. He then starts going on about how they're going to have to review my employment contract and consider whether or not going forward that I'm a good fit at this corporation. Now, in case I seem too calm in this scenario, bear in mind that while I do prefer to remain at this company for the time being, I do not care if they want to fire me. I'm very good at my job, and I've had several job offers from competing companies, so the threat of being fired does not faze me. While Art is berating me, I take out my phone and I start playing the recording I made when calling in sick. Art then stops and starts to get annoyed, and then he realizes that he's listening to a recording of an employee verbally berating and intimidating a worker for exercising their contractual legal rights. He excuses himself, and he's gone for about 10 minutes before returning, visibly angry but restrained. He tried to dress me down, scare me, intimidate me into thinking that I had violated the law with an illegal recording. I told him that working as I did as a professional researcher, I had, to no surprise, done my research, and single-party consent is all that was required. He then shifted gears, saying the recording didn't count because the supervisor thought I was joking. I respond, I wasn't. He says, but she thought you were. I then tell him, and she was wrong. So it doesn't really matter what she thought, Art. I told her the truth, and she made a mistake. And recording my own phone conversations is 100% legal and admissible. Art then leaves, and he returns a few minutes later, even more red-faced. He yells at me and says, you can go back to your desk. So I did as instructed, and that was all I ever heard again about using my paid time off. Whenever I called in from then on, they were always very precise and professional. Their tone was as cold as a politician's promise, but that was a lot better than the bullying from before. In my opinion, OP should have recorded that conversation with HR too, because that sounded like frickin' BS what they were trying to pull. Like every single time they tried to lie to OP and bully them, they were opening up the company to even more legal action, which is exactly what HR's job is to prevent. That said though, being in a one-party consent state, I'm pretty sure that means you can record a call by just being a participant in it. OP didn't even need to tell her they were recording. But yeah, I do hope OP started looking for new employment after that because obvious reasons. So for some context, this happened back in December 2013. I hit 18 years old and I wanted to get a job. Earn enough cash to pay my way through college, that kind of thing. My very first job was at a children's fair. I helped run a Coca-Cola stand in a game platform within the children's fair. It would last only for a week, and the pay was decent enough for a brat trying to earn something for themselves, which was my case, even if the hours were pretty inconvenient. So there we were, 4 teens, 5 stands, and about 30 kids per stand at any given time. The others were old hand at this, and all of them had worked there at least once, and one of them even more. We declared her team leader on the spot. And then of course, there was our manager. Let's call her Lazy Bitch, or Karen, I suppose. She was filing her nails and checking her phone while we all tried to organize ourselves and keep control of 2 stands at once, making sure the children were engaged. On top of that, we had to make sure that nothing got lost or broken, try to keep parents happy, convince kids to take turns, endure tantrums, that sort of stuff. Team lead ran a tight ship. After the end of the first shift, which was a half day, Karen was supposed to address any concerns we had. It was pretty stressful work, and team lead told us it wasn't the first time that somebody just up and left mid-shift, and she wasn't surprised that they sent someone to keep an eye on things. Karen up and left 2 hours before closing. We were baffled. She didn't look at us once and didn't even talk to us. Nothing. Zero, zilch, nada. She just got up and went home. And the thing is, we had concerns. We needed at least 2 people to control one of the games. 2 other games required us to run around behind plastic balls or crouching down to pick up bottle caps nearly every second before a random, unsupervised 3-year-old went and swallowed one. And believe me, there were a legion. Besides which, we need an additional half hour at the beginning and end of our shifts to set everything up and do cleanup. So at the end of the day, team lead takes out her phone, and she asked us to tell us her concerns, and she would relay them to Karen. Her tone wasn't promising though, and then things get weird. I asked, why don't you just email this to the people who employed us? Team lead said, what do you mean? I'm sending this to Karen, aren't I? That's when I say, but if Karen wanted to listen to our concerns, she would have stayed, wouldn't she? If she won't, it's only right to relay them directly to her superiors. She would have had to report to them anyway, right? And our employer would want to know if there was any trouble. At this point, team lead gets a glint in her eye. I was confused about this, as in my mind, my solution was the reasonable next step. But I was a naive, devious creature. Mind you, I didn't realize the petty revenge brewing or the malicious compliance to follow. I really was that oblivious. I still am sometimes. Team lead nodded thoughtfully. She recorded us all and promised to make a report and send it to Karen, her direct superior, and our employer. Karen was there the next day, bright and early, and she was fuming. Team lead says, "Oh, so you received my mail then?" Karen says, "Why the hell did you do that?" Team lead responds, well, we had our concerns. You were supposed to ask us yesterday and deal with them today, but we understand that you must have had quite a busy schedule, so we compiled it ourselves. At this point, Karen's turning a very intriguing shade of red. I remember wondering if she caught a cold or something. From here on out, it's malicious compliance by all parts. There are no innocents beyond this point. Karen then says, I see. Well, let's address the problems, shall we? We don't have the money to get more people, so you'll have to figure out something on your own. I'm sure you'll come up with something. In regards to the stress, I said 1 person per game. Choose one and stick with it. Your responsibility is with the company. Lost children, children eating bottle caps, children throwing tantrums are not our concern. If parents get difficult, kick them out. It's not effing rocket science. So basically, she not only refused to address any of our concerns, she dismissed them out of hand and called us both incompetent and spoiled. She also condescended us and told us we weren't doing our jobs right, and she hinted that we would get half pay. Now look, I was a pretty sweet kid, a little naive, plenty kind, shy, and quiet, but scream at me and make me feel like crap, game on. I thought to myself, so we weren't doing our jobs right, were we? Okay, that's when team lead and I shared this look. So we closed down the most troublesome and popular game because we were, quote, short on staff. We're terribly sorry. We also put a barricade at the door and limited entry to about 30 people at a time, parents included. We then closed the second most troublesome and popular game booth, mine, in the 3 last hours of our shift so we could take short breaks to de-stress. Whenever we saw a lost kid, we called loudly at the security guards to their bewilderment. It's company policy, apparently. can't leave the booth to help lost kids. We got yelled at this morning by our boss. We also smiled at the ranting parents until they lost steam, and they start babbling awkwardly, looking a little creeped out. Karen laid down the law, did she? Well, we were effing embracing this effing law. On that day, we made about half of what we did on the half shift. On the half shift, we worked only 4 hours, but that day, we stayed from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., plus an additional hour for opening and closing. And most of what we earned were tips from the parents. Team lead kept a note of it all with the precision and dedication that I only thought surgeons and homicide detectives possessed, and apparently road engineers do too. So you can imagine Karen's face when she came in the next day, because she'd decided to be more proactive and she looked at our earnings. She accused us of taking the money for ourselves. That's when team lead gives her the impeccable record of our earnings the day before and told her that she had sent it to our employer and her superior already. We then reminded Karen of our suggestions. We were shot down, we were reamed again, and she repeated the same spiel. We then grimly followed the rules, even more aggressively than before. Team lead kept a log and brought a sheet and asked the parents to sign if they'd please, because corporate's doing a survey, you see. And when they didn't, she asked their kids, which were always happy to have a bic in hand to get to some mischief. And not to worry, team lead had at least 200 of them in her bag. I figured we had passed the event horizon about then, but I didn't even care anymore. Instead of smiling at the ranting parents until they ran away uncomfortable and disquieted, I was good at this one. We called security instead and stated corporate policy. Harassment of employees will result in the person being escorted from the premises immediately, and we got them escorted out of the fair entirely. The most popular game remained closed. The other games closed for about 2 hours each irregularly, while we took our lunch and bathroom breaks. It was anarchy at this point, and team lead was unstoppable. Every day, when she got home from work, she sent our list of complaints, with an added bonus for each day that passed, to our superiors, Karen included. She endured Karen's rants each morning and kept us informed and working as a well-oiled machine despite the chaos. On the final day, things had calmed down considerably. Karen didn't show up, which at this point was pretty suspicious in hindsight. But we didn't care. It was a tiring week and the calm was relaxing. In the morning, we only had to deal with a tourist group. No more than 50 total. None of them spoke our language to save their lives, but I was pretty fluent, even if my pronunciation was awful, so we got them more than once. And we probably broke even from Karen's crappy management skills cash-wise, thanks to them alone. Team lead notes it all down religiously, and I played tour guide with her blessing and translated for everyone. And then I see Karen walking to our booth. I'd already explained to a couple of the parents about Karen and our circumstances, mostly to translate and spread more gossip, so when they saw her and I confirmed she was Karen, they told me to go back and they would come say goodbye later. They were really lovely people. So I reach my booth shortly before Karen does, and then there was silence. Literally everyone in the game platform was looking at us. I guess people like to look at train wrecks. And that's when Karen smiles, and she told us in tones of rejoicing and celebration that she was ready to address our concerns. I knew team lead was angry, and I knew my coworkers were angry. And I, myself, was confused because, hello, look around you. There's about 20 kids total today, and not even in one of our booths at once, which was our actual most pressing concern. I may have said that out loud. Karen looked stunned and indignant. Team lead looked delighted and stunned too. Everyone looked pretty effing stunned, yes? And then, in the middle of the stalemate, a handful of pretty tourist mothers sashayed in, and there's no other word for it. They bypassed the ticket box, kissed me on the cheek, and put a 50 in each of our tip jars before sashaying right the F out. That's when Karen says out loud, "What the F?" And seriously, I felt dirty for sharing her what the F moment. I'm mature enough to admit it, probably. She then got back to her bearings pretty quick though, and then began ranting. And then Karen said that any earnings in our tip jars would go to the company, since they had been earned on their property, and we were their employees, and we should be grateful that we wouldn't get half pay. And that's when Team Lead lost her lid, in a quiet way that makes people with vengeful siblings get the hell out of Dodge before crap hits the fan. I made my excuses, and I got the heck out of there. Team Lead told us later that she had memorized the company manual out of spite, her words, and she told Karen in perfect detail what would happen if she or the company touched our spoils. In very polite, very small words, just in case, she then asked if we'd be willing to go to court over this, because her lawyer friend told her we had a case if we wanted. Team Lead told me I didn't have to if I didn't want to, as this was my first job after all, and nobody should make me feel pressured. She said if it made me or anyone else the slightest bit uncomfortable, she could carry on alone. The others were on the fence, but me, well, it went like this, more or less. I responded, if you need my help, I'll help. She asked, are you sure? I respond, sure. I won't be coming back next year anyways, and I don't want anyone they hire to be treated like we were. And that was my sticking point, believe it or not. I'd never worked before, but I've suffered secondhand the results of a toxic working environment, and I don't want that for anyone, even now. So long story short, we went to court, we won, we got our sizable paycheck plus 10 times that for a hostile working environment and withholding wages. But yeah, in the end, I earned in a week what I'd need to pay for a year of college tuition. So thanks for being a bitch, Mrs. Karen. Take frickin' notes, guys. The downfall of any crappy manager is meticulous note-taking. What a story that was. And honestly, why that Karen boss wasn't fired after the first day, who knows? I'm thinking nepotism plays a part. It's gotta be, right? Because the company would seriously suck if it fails to do something after the second time things derail big time like that. I'm just glad things worked out in the end, and what an amazing story that was. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of our /malicious compliance. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy stories. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, it's an r/petty revenge episode where psycho Karens are getting arrested for the most wild reasons. Guys, go check it out if you haven't, and myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.